In 2002, elections were held in Iraq, and guess who got 100% of the votes? Saddam Hussein. Of course. No big surprise there. But nothing like that could ever happen in our country, right?
I think the American people are owed impeachment proceedings in the House of Representatives.
Those who criticize the Patriot Act must listen.
Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bends thee for a space.
A world where you only have choice on the surface, but in reality, you're a complete and total slave on a global plantation.
People need to understand this administration lied to the nation about 9/11.
Terrorism must be looked at from all points of the globe, not just America.
I tried to warn the American people of the dangers that I saw emanating from this administration.
The war on terrorism is a thin cover for the war on dissent.
They'll swear up and down a bill is going to give you more freedom, and it's actually giving you a lot less.
So to all the tyrants today and all the tyrants back in history and the tyrants to come in the future, you will be defeated.
You have the spirits of evil working in the leaders and in the politicians and in the generals, working with them. You have nothing but evil.
You need to answer real questions instead of lying.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild. I don't know. I haven't seen the website. Number 322. You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, a secret number? There are all kinds of secrets. If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator, 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 I'm the dictator.
American dictatorship. What is an American dictatorship? Well, it's the system of power, the system of control, our real form of government in this country. The American dictatorship is the powerful global corporations that own and control the military-industrial complex, giving you false choices so you think that you have a decision to make in the 2004 election. But either way, a blue blood from the East Coast wins.
Those guys were both members of the secret society at Yale, right?
I have on my website, Infowars.com.
So we're not getting this new guy is no better than the lone
Here's
guy.
the deal. If you believe Reuters, they're third cousins. If you believe the Associated Press, they're ninth cousins. They're both ninth cousins to Hugh Hefner. They're members of the same secret society, only 15 members each year, which admittedly was set up in 1832 to overthrow the U.S.
And we only have 800 living members of that organization, but you can count their members as 3 presidents, 8 CIA directors, many of the heads of the Fortune 500. And they work in concert together to bring you the unfolding police state, to bring you these criminal wars of aggression against sovereign, innocent nations.
Bush, Kerry, and Hefner, odd cousins.
Oh, you
CBS
found it.
News.
Well, understand, anything I spew out is documented up one side, down the other. I don't care how crazy it sounds.
You're right, though. Check this out. Hugh Hefner was quoted as saying, "I would be delighted to invite President Bush and Senator Kerry for a family reunion." CBS News confirms that Bush, Kerry, and Hefner are cousins.
It's very important to know that this film has been made in the course of the last 12 months. And time again on my own syndicated radio broadcast, and as we made this documentary, I said, look, it's going to be Kerry. Even when Dean was ahead of Kerry, I said, it's going to be Kerry. Think of that. Out of 290 million Americans, we have 2 people from the most elite secret society in the United States, only 15 members tapped or chosen each year. And this is who we get for our presidential candidates. Out of 290 million, 2 people from the same organization that just chooses a couple people every year. It's absolutely incredible.
Can you guys open website audio up on the air?
Yeah.
You can go to Infowars.com or PrisonPlanet.com right now, scroll down, and it says Skull and Bones, and you can play the clip of Bush on Meet the Press a few weeks ago saying, yeah, it's so secret I can't talk about it.
Okay, let me play this.
Yeah.
See if it works.
Yeah.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
Kind of skipped over it, didn't he?
Well, he just said it's so secret I can't talk about it. Now go down. Under that...
Oh, so he was serious? I thought he was kidding.
Under that is Lord Kerry on Meet the Press about a month earlier.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
And he laughs, too.
Wow. Do you know what's interesting about that clip? They both gave the same
answer,
short answer, and moved on to the next subject with a chuckle.
With a little chuckle in between.
No, I'm saying it's all staged.
That's pretty weird.
So we have these cousins who are members of the same secret society who have sworn an oath to each other above all other oaths. And they admit, even in the mainstream media, but laugh and say, oh, it's no big deal, that these so-called leaders engage in bizarre occultic rituals. And it's so weird that the general public has trouble even interfacing with it. There's kind of a cognitive dissonance that we don't want to believe it. We cannot ignore it. It's right out in the open.
What about Skull and Bones?
Skull and Bones obviously gets a good deal of attention simply because A, it's secret, and B, the members are people who often turn up in high places later in life, and we'll certainly hear lots about it this year because both George W. Bush and John Kerry were members. Most of the conspiracy theories that are out there now tend to place a lot of emphasis on the notion that there are interlocking secret organizations that hold the real power in the world, and because of its secrecy and because of the elite background of many of its members, Skull and Bones is a prime candidate for that.
Well, this isn't just the Skull and Bones when they're 22 or whatever. This is when they're old men at Bohemian Grove. And the point is, in the Trio Network documentary for my footage, they admit, yes, Mr. Jones got the ritual, yes, we're doing this, but it's just for fun. Well, the point is that it's a ritual about not having a conscience. It's the cremation of care.
Well, I wish I could have that one.
Alex Jones has been talking about this for quite a while. The Bohemian Grove, of course, is a privately owned redwood grove up in Sonoma County north of San Francisco, where every summer there is a get-together of the wealthy and well-placed, all male, who get together for general cavorting, socializing, lectures, symposia, and so on, in an atmosphere that is completely removed from public scrutiny. Alex Jones and some others have suggested for a long time that there are all sorts of nefarious rituals that go on.
I woke up one morning to learn that I had been attacked for an hour and a half on C-SPAN by Brian Lamb and some professor. And the professor gets up there and says, well, Mr. Jones claims he snuck into this place called Bohemian Grove, and Mr. Jones claims all these wild things. Look, I have the video. They admit I snuck in. It's been in the major newspapers on the West Coast, the San Francisco Chronicle, the newspaper there in Santa Rosa, the Press Democrat. And I snuck in, and here were our so-called Christian conservative leaders worshiping Moloch.
Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bans thee for a space. Thy malevolence which would pursue us here has lost its power under these friendly trees. So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free.
From the Skull and Bones Society at Yale, founded in 1832, to the Bohemian Grove, founded in 1872. And that path has led us back to Monterey and the Bohemian Grove in Northern California. Here we are, my friends, 3 years later. There have been a lot of news articles and rumors about world leaders meeting and engaging in satanic rituals. Now, the news admitted the world leaders met here every year, going back at least 75 years, with presidents coming here going back over 100 years ago. But we wanted to try to put the rumors to rest, find out if it was true. We snuck in to the Bohemian Grove, and I was able to catch one of their many rituals on tape, the cremation of care. And yes, the leaders of the Bohemian Grove, based in San Francisco, have admitted that I did indeed tape the ritual. But they say I'm blowing it all out of proportion. They're just having fun. It's a theatrical production. Yes, our Christian conservative leaders meeting and engaging in an ancient Canaanite human sacrifice reenactment ritual. It's no big deal here in the Transylvanian-style woods of Northern California. The published annals of the Grove admit that the Manhattan Project developing the atom bomb was developed here. The Star Wars project in the late 1970s was hatched at one of the Grove encampments. And I was stunned in late 2004 to see 2 articles in the New York Times talking about the Bohemian Grove. Another article in the Wall Street Journal exposing Bohemian Grove but saying that it was no big deal. We pulled down the river. Our truck got stuck. We get out, we go down, talk to the fire department, they come down to pull us out. We just say, hey, what's the Bohemian Grove? They began threatening us, telling us to turn the cameras off. Thanks a lot, buddy. So, Brian, do you work at the Bohemian Grove? Yeah. Well, we're not here for that. No, I was asking him about it because I heard about it. And then he says you work there. He's lying. He doesn't work there, see? Well, he was telling me about it's like where the president goes and stuff. And so we were going to, like, talk to him, and then he's all over.
Yeah, man, shut the camera off.
Here we are at the entrance to the 2,700-acre club that really begins a few hundred yards back there with several guard shacks and checkpoints. How's it going, bud? It says Bohemian Grove Security. We were driving through this town, and we asked what was in the town. They said the Pink Elephant, the motel, and the Bohemian Club. We said, what's the club? They said, that's where these rich people go, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then we asked a firefighter about it because our truck was stuck, and he freaked out and said, I'm not talking about it. Now we're interested. So what goes on here? A resort for rich people. Okay. Thanks. See you later. Here, let's stop and ask this person about the Grove. You guys know about the Bohemian Grove? What do you think of it?
I've been here for 49 years.
Been there 49 years?
I've been here 49 years.
What do you think of the Grove?
Still there. I never worked up there or anything, but...
Oh, yes, you have. I disagree.
Yeah.
Oh, he means we don't have the ID.
Hey.
Hi, I'm not...
Come on, Jen.
And neither is... Is that an electric eye?
Yes.
Cool. We're over here looking for a handbag.
What do you think of the Bohemian Grove?
They throw a lot of parties up there. A lot of government
Random
officials
food and
come in
liquor.
and fly out.
I'd like to get one of their IDs. Oh, we've had that from...
Get in the truck, go.
What do we think of it? What is the Bohemian Grove?
Bohemian Grove's a man's
now they're men.
party place, right?
You are so full of... Oh, you said that because you're a man, that's how you found out. Well, not being a man, I found out slightly differently.
You found out about the Grove differently?
Yeah, because I didn't go there as a man to party. I went there as a woman to party because, well,
come on, Carol.
Look, that's a valet, okay.
Have a good evening.
You're doing out.
Where?
What channel is this on?
Should we follow you?
It's not going to be on...
We'll follow you.
All right.
Carol. Yeah.
Bye.
Take care.
You're beginning to sink deeper into the rabbit hole now. And find out about the Grove. This is a Twilight Zone, like, Lovecraft novel or something. I want to tell everybody out in TV land how they can come to the Grove, where their elected leaders, along with the big bankers and the heads of media, meet, along with some European royalty, every year to decide how to run the country. You can fly into San Francisco, or you can fly into Santa Rosa. You can even fly into Sacramento, and you just drive out to Highway 101. You take Highway 12 out west towards the coast. You get about 10 miles out from the coast, right outside the little town of Monterrey. And the town of Monterrey, off the main drag, you'll take the Bohemian Avenue. And it dead ends right here at the 2,700-acre Redwood Grove entrance, where your world leaders, among other things, set policy for much of the planet and dress up in black and red robes and worship, Moloch. They would say that Moloch was a Canaanite deity that children were sacrificed to. They don't say they worship Satan, they just worship an old deity that likes to gobble children, basically. It's so generational, they're so compartmentalized at the top of the pyramid that they don't even know it. This is what they are. They're a beast just rending people.
Yeah, and the people are allowing it to happen because they know nothing else.
The modern dictatorship relies on what is euphemistically called mind control. Many Americans have accepted mind control and simply call it spin or advertising.
Some people have wacky ideas like taxing gasoline more so people drive less. That's John Kerry.
We're going to keep pounding, let me tell you. Just beginning to fight here. These guys are the most crooked, lying group I've ever seen.
Who's crooked and lying? The president?
I was talking about the attack machine.
So this, in essence, is the American dictatorship. A world where you only have choice on the surface, but in reality, you're a complete and total slave on a global plantation, a feudal serf.
I think the American people are owed impeachment proceedings in the House of Representatives. After all, the Congress ought to obey one provision of the U.S. Constitution that they are sworn to uphold.
In March of 2004, on the one-year anniversary of the beginning of Gulf War II, a local peace group based in Dallas, Texas, requested that I come and speak after Ralph Nader, the popular consumer advocate who also ran for president in 2000. And I told him, look, I don't really support Ralph Nader. I think he'd obviously be better than George Bush or Al Gore. He could be a shill put in there to ensure that Lord Bush gets in to office yet again. But I said that I doubt that because things are so obviously staged between the two literal kissing cousins, the two coffin mates from Skull and Bones, Kerry and Bush. But I said I'll be glad to go and give a speech about the New World Order and hopefully wake up people on the supposed left. Because when you really get down to it, the left and right are controlled by the same people. I don't see that as really an accurate reality when you truly investigate the facts.
Members of both parties were in complicity. They surrendered their sacred constitutional authority and gave the authority to declare war under his timing and place and manner unconstitutionally to George W. Bush. Nobody was indicted. Nobody was prosecuted. You go out here in Texas and violate a traffic ordinance, and you'll get a more severe penalty than the egregious violation of your own constitutional rights by the Congress of the President of the United States.
And there were about 800 people there. There was one peace group that had gotten time there at the City Park in Crawford, Texas, right outside George Bush's Hollywood set, where he struts around acting like a cowboy and not a British royal blue blood from Kennebunkport, Maine. And we got there, and the people that had brought in Ralph Nader, the state coordinators, they wanted me to speak, and they had actually got the time for Ralph Nader at 5 p.m. But when it got time for me to go up and introduce Ralph Nader, the so-called peace group from Austin, Texas, was outraged, and the UT professor was outraged, and they began trying to keep me from speaking. And I nicely went ahead and gave them the microphone back, and then we had to have some of the local authorities explain to them that indeed Ralph Nader's group had invited me in to speak, and that indeed I was supposed to then go and introduce him.
The military-industrial complex runs the red light cameras, the cameras in the schools, the private prisons. That's what it's all about. They are setting up a Nazi Germany-type system here domestically. And you know what? I want to thank the folks that put this together. Lori Tice and others. They're the ones that brought Ralph Nader in. And the local folks are great too. But it's 5 o'clock. They're only supposed to be up here. But here they are because, well, they love talking to crowds. God bless you. I'm coming up later to expose the New World Order. Stay with us. Yeah!
Just amazing activity. The fissures we see even in the so-called peace movement. And their abject fear of me because I'm pro-gun, pro-national sovereignty, and against the tyranny of the Democratic Party. Bill Clinton did a lot to destroy our liberties and freedoms because he's a tool of the elite. Bill Clinton helped protect bin Laden when Sudan and Afghanistan wanted to arrest him. He was just carrying out the policy of the CIA as an active puppet for the globalists. But they couldn't seem to figure that out. They can't understand that if we're going to get our country back, so-called right-wingers and so-called left-wingers and libertarians are going to have to come together and really get outside the box and see the big picture.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to see if I get up here and they magically appear again. Seriously, if we're going to defeat this global tyranny, the left and right have to wake up to the fact that left and right is a fraud. The only difference between George W. Bush and John Forbes Kerry, well, they're cousins, they're members of Skull and Bones. Their voting record is almost identical. Think about that. Their voting record is almost identical. They both voted for the war. They're all for the same issue. That's the key here.
And I have to tell you that after having a chance to talk to Ralph Nader's staff, after being able to interview Mr. Nader, I do think that there is a well-founded suspicion by a lot of Democrats that Ralph Nader is acting, whether unconsciously or consciously, as an agent to throw the election to George W. Bush. The Democrats say anybody but Bush, whereas in reality, it really doesn't matter. Either way, they've got this election fixed. As we said, this is the American dictatorship where the elite gets their man, their puppet, their figurehead in the position of power.
We were partially responsible, our government was partially responsible for Saddam Hussein, as we were supporting any so-called anti-communist dictator in the world. Along with the British, we helped entrench him as a dictator of Iraq in 1979. We equipped him with arms. We gave him foreign assistance and credits. We had our corporations apply and receive export permits from the Department of Commerce in the 1980s under the Reagan and Bush 1 administration, providing this brutal dictator with the raw materials for chemical and biological warfare. In 1983, Donald Rumsfeld, special envoy, visited Saddam Hussein when these materials were being used and didn't say anything. He was our dictator after all, wasn't he? He was our dictator. The U.S. government has overthrown over 50 dictators since World War II without invading them. They're experts at overthrowing not our dictators, the other side's dictators. It's interesting just to speculate. Why in the world, knowing that he's a tottering dictator with disloyal troops ready to run at a moment's notice and surrounded by enemies, why in the world didn't the U.S. government under George W. Bush merely overthrow him instead of invade Iraq? There's a 3-letter word for that, folks. Oil! Oil.
What did we see in the last election between Albert Gore and George W. Bush in 2000? We saw two different rival factions inside the New World Order fighting for control, fighting for the management position of CEO of the New World Order, of Slavery Incorporated. It's clear that Al Gore did win the popular vote. It's not clear if that popular vote was actually his or if Democratic operatives had stuffed ballot boxes and manipulated votes at the local level to the point of him winning by a narrow margin. But what is clear is that George W. Bush and different members of the constabulary in Florida and other states did steal the election, did block recounts, did disregard numbers that showed that Al Gore had indeed won the election. And then when that was in question, the Supreme Court, 7 of the 9 members appointed by Republicans, then returned the favor and appointed George Walker Bush as the President of the United States.
We're talking about a dictatorship of the mind, where the people are scared into absolute submission. Did you ever imagine that you would see the federal government up on television saying, well, the terrorists may want to disrupt our democratic process, so we're going to have to disrupt the democratic process. We may need to cancel or suspend the election if there's a threat or if there is a terrorist attack. But I thought the terrorists wanted to disrupt our elections, so why would you now try to disrupt the elections? How obvious, how transparent, how see-through is that?
There was a case in Tennessee where the tabulation software added illegally a quarter of a vote to the favored candidate for every one vote that the unfavored candidate received. Now that was flat out wrong, but because this particular unfavored candidate had Judge Joe Brown on his side, they were able to sue and find out exactly what happened. So we understand that these manipulations are going to take place.
ES&S, Election Systems Software. Republican Senator Chuck Hagel, who is he? He's got ownership ties through a holding company to ES&S. Well, he's a 20-year friend of the Bush family. He almost became our vice president instead of Dick Cheney. And he won his seat in the Senate twice by these big landslides in Nebraska, in a state that had not elected a Republican senator in over 24 years. But you know what? The votes were counted, 80% of his votes were counted by ES&S voting machines. Maybe it's a little coincidence, I don't know. Don't know.
It's very important for everyone out there to spend time looking at the election process in your county, in your city.
While Americans are being fed a steady diet of Michael Jackson and Lacey Peterson and lots of football, our elections are being stolen by the owners and controllers of electronic voting machine companies by rigged software and no paper audit trails. And time is running out for us to do something about it.
I spoke to the Libertarian Distinguished Speaker Series here in Austin, Texas, and I have to tell you, I was delighted when I told the crowd of several hundred people that if anybody here disagrees with me, please ask a question, please state why. And no one said that they disagreed with me. This shows that we're winning the intellectual battle, that a mass awakening, a renaissance is taking place. And that's the best news I can give you.
You know how when a tornado's coming, or an earthquake, and they've done studies of this at major universities, mice, dogs, cats get restless, start running around, get upset, sometimes hours, in some cases even days before. They have that sixth sense. They have that instinct. They have that survival mechanism deep inside them. And we all have that too as the most advanced creature on this planet. But it's pushed to the side by modern culture. We're supposed to ignore it. So the point I'm trying to make is, deep down, people know that something is wrong. Deep down, people are ready to move and stand up against the New World Order.
And it was exciting to be able to hear the speaker before I spoke, who detailed just some of the key smoking guns and bullet points and red flags concerning industrialized election fraud.
In 2002, elections were held in Iraq, and guess who got 100% of the votes? Saddam Hussein, of course. No big surprise there. But nothing like that could ever happen in our country, right? Well, what if I were to tell you today that virtually any hacker with a laptop could hack into the electronic voting machines that are being used in most of the states across our country, that are going to be used by 50 million Americans in November while they're voting for president, adding votes, and changing the final tally without being detected.
The work that you heard earlier being spoken about with the electronic voting machines is very, very serious. This is the arrogance of government.
And you can see that they're getting more and more arrogant, more and more aggressive. And that's been the norm throughout history. Governments are tyrannical, powerful, ruthless people always seek to get into positions of greater control. That's just been human history. But somehow, the mainstream media, mind washers over the last 50 years, have convinced the general public, the middle class namely, that government is nothing but good. It never does anything wrong. Anybody that questions it or wants to limit it is crazy. The law enforcement handbooks and manuals and the videos I've been sent by police of what FEMA and Homeland Security is teaching them, doesn't matter if it's Democratic administrations or if it's George W. Bush, it's horrible. They're saying that if you question government, if you get involved, if you speak out, you're bad. And that's a classic example and a key indicator of tyranny out of control.
Well, one of the things that I think we need to rely on is, the fact that there's a long tradition in America separating the military from the police. George Washington, for instance, refused kingship, was offered this title, but refused to take on that role, suggesting that, it was not right for a movement in those days that was about opposing the state, the quartering of soldiers in people's houses and so forth. It was an anti-militarism that sort of founded this country, and the separation between the military and the police is kind of the foundation upon which our democracy is built. So I think one of the things that people need to look at is the ways in which that we can recodify the Posse Comitatus Act. The Posse Comitatus Act being the criminal statute which bars the military from enforcing laws domestically.
Austin, Texas is known as the live music capital of the world. And Ozomatli is a Grammy Award-winning band that has no history of causing any problems. They came to Austin, their venue was totally jam-packed. In the middle of their set, the fire marshal requested that they help get the crowd outside because it was overflowing. When they did that, police from outside rushed in on them and said, get people back in the bar. Don't have them come out on the sidewalk. This was all caught by tourists on tape as they peacefully complied. But the police were already in that mad dog mentality and began assaulting the crowd with tear gas and then arresting members of the band, including the manager, and charging some of them with felonies, despite the fact that nothing illegal was caught on tape and no one resisted them. This is becoming a very serious pattern, not just in Austin, Texas, but around the country.
I went to Cuba, for like 10 days. And this is supposed to be a dictatorship, truly, uncut, and I was walking around pretty drunk on Cuban rum, and a Cuban police officer totally treated me with like a respect and a help that I would have never gotten in LA.
So what you're saying is, as Americans, and I've experienced this, we think we're free, but we go to foreign countries that are supposedly dictatorships, and they're freer than we are, and the police treat you with more respect than we get here in this country.
Well, I don't know if necessarily freer would be the actual thing. I think it's more of just how police are viewed and how they're trained and how they actually work in that particular society or in that particular country and culture.
So why are they getting so arrogant? Why are they laughing at us? Why are they being so out in the open about the despotism that they're engaging in, this command and control system they're setting up? It is, in large part, because of the electronic touchscreen, no record voting systems they're putting in. 3 of the major companies have former deputy directors of the CIA on their board of directors. The local voting machine company that we all supposedly vote on is in large part controlled and owned by Clear Channel. Clear Channel, and of course Clear Channel is a globalist organization, basically an intelligence operation. And we have Clear Channel, Mr. Mays' son-in-law, just married to his daughter, is Michael McCall, and he's the guy who's married to the daughter. They're the biggest campaign contributors to him in the new District 10 runoff race that's coming up. No Democrats running against him. Think about that. He's married to the daughter. The Clear Channel is the biggest contributor to his campaign, and they own the electronic voting machines. And the county clerk, David Dubois, tells us there's going to be no paper ballot. You're not going to have a record. There's going to be no receipt of it. And why would you don't trust us, she says? Well, no, you just got caught in 1998 double counting ballot boxes, falsifying signatures, and breaking safety seals. But the state board looked at it and said it was all a complete accident. And that was with the old system where they had to feed the paper ballots in, then it went into an electronic spreadsheet, and that too could be manipulated. But now with these new systems, there's just no record at all.
Just another quick update for you in the course of making this documentary. We talked about Michael McCall, running for a new special created 10th district here in Central Texas. And then magically, despite the facts saying that he would lose according to polls, he magically won, just like Senator Hagel, who owned the voting machine company, and he ran as an underdog way behind the polls, and he magically won too. So you're wondering why government's getting more and more arrogant? They own the voting machines. Out of the 5 big voting machine companies, 3 of them are headed by former CIA deputy directors or directors. One of the other big ones is run by the former head of the National Security Agency, or the NSA. And then again, others are owned by people like Clear Channel. So I think that answers the question for you. But they know that you can't handle the horror of this. Then we've got the League of Women Voters, a supposed political watchdog group running all over the country trying to block a good Republican's bill, Congressman Rush Holt's bill, to demand a paper record of the electronic voting machines. They're blocking that, saying, no, we don't want any record of how you vote. Don't be a conspiracy theorist. You're bad if you want a record. We send advisors and monitors all over the planet to these third world countries, these tin-horn dictatorships, to monitor their elections. And we demand a paper trail. But here, hey, don't be paranoid. We just don't want you to have that record. Better think about that.
Why is it that you believe what Alex Jones tells you?
Because he makes a lot of sense. There are just too many coincidences about the whole situation. I watch a lot of history. I watch a lot of PBS. I do not watch propaganda. As Hitler said, it is easier to believe a big lie than a little lie.
A lot of you have already instinctively known that something was wrong on 9/11. But you're still saying, how could elements of the government do something so horrible? How could they carry something out like this? Well, look what happened to millions of American Indians. Look what happened to African Americans because of criminal elements in the government and individuals that stood to gain by their enslavement, by their murder. So don't be naive. Look at history. Look at what all the dictators have done. Look at what's gone on in kings and queens' courts. Look at the subterfuge they had going on 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, and then magnify that today. It's very naive to look at all the motives that the military-industrial complex had for 9/11, and then to look at all their connections with the Taliban, with the Al-Qaeda, with training the supposed hijackers, with giving public officials warnings. You cannot deny what's developing here, what's happening. You see, they know that people are on to the fact that 9/11 is a cover-up, that there was prior knowledge, and yes, even government involvement and founding of groups like Al-Qaeda. And so they put on this big WWF wrestling spectacle, this staged event, much like the election. Many of the members, business partners with the Bushes, business partners with the Bin Ladens. Remember when they first set up the commission, they tried to have Dr. Henry Kissinger as the head of it, and the media called him the independent chairman? Well, this new independent commission is no more independent than Dr. Henry Kissinger was going to be as the chairman.
What we really need is a bipartisan congressional inquiry, which has been proposed by some members of Congress, but the leadership by the Republicans has blocked it. Someday the truth will come out about how $30 billion of intelligence budgets a year couldn't follow the tracks of these attackers that were apparent for 4 years before the September 11th attack and were signaled to the headquarters in Washington in some fashion by the field offices of 2 FBI offices in the field. So a bipartisan response.
From day one, the 9/11 Commission said they weren't going to address any blame on the government. They were going to call for recommendations. And before they even had their whitewash investigation, they said, we're going to call for Patriot Act 2. We're going to call for a giant domestic CIA spying on every American, just like the KGB or the GRU. And then they were going to give us their findings after the election, but after there was some criticism, they said, okay, we'll bring you our findings beforehand. And then, the day after they announced their findings, calling for a domestic CIA to keep us all safe from ourselves, they have another fake terror alert, which admittedly later was fake. But what a nice backdrop to scare the people into going along with this. The 9/11 Commission, we can make a whole film about this. The whole thing is a fraud. And I read their final report. I went through the whole thing, and it would take an encyclopedia to counter all the lies and misrepresentations that are in it. I would just challenge everybody to understand that any commission appointed by those being investigated is not independent. Powerful people at the pinnacles of success are there in many cases because they are ruthless, because they could care less about anyone but themselves. They'd sell their mother out for a piece of bubble gum. And again, history has shown that.
Wait a minute, you saying G.W. Bush? George Bush engineered the attacks on the World Trade Center.
Well, the people
that guy says subliminal.
He's a front man. I'm saying the brand
Nigeria is an important brand to name.
Look, George Bush is the red coating on the Coca-Cola can. He's the brand front. But back at the factory, you know, the guys at the factory, you know, the New World Order top of his game. That's the A game right there. Do you know what W199I is?
That's your locker combination.
W1. You better. It's deadly serious. You better know what W199I is.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Get up there.
2 months before September 11th, George Bush signed it, ordering all FBI and defense intel officers they would be arrested under national security violation if they stopped the Al-Qaeda terror rings in Chicago, Florida, New York, and New Jersey. The deputy head of the FBI...
Why would he
let me give you the facts and you go check it out for yourself. Anyways, Deputy FBI Director John O'Neill quit, released the document, and was dead on September 11th. Okay? And the document's out there. I had David Shippers on, General Parton, all these people. It was
he died on September 11th.
Yeah, he died on the 24th floor of the World Trade Center. Okay. He had just been hired.
He was on the trade.
He had just been hired by the owners of the Trade Center right after quitting. He thought it was a great deal. He didn't see the full scope. The Rockefeller family, along with the Port Authority, owned those towers, and had just transferred it 2 weeks before the attack, but he'd already been hired. His first day on the job, he was taken out. He's the guy that blew the whistle preemptively. It's in the New Yorker magazine, just one of the 500 publications.
On PrisonPlanet.com and Infowars.com, we have over 600 9/11 smoking guns, or what we call red flags. Each one of these issues is enough to bring down the official story surrounding 9/11. Bottom line, their official story or fable is impossible, has been disproven at hundreds of levels. And they never respond once they've been proved to be liars. They just simply try to change their story.
I got news for you. The world is round. You can put me in prison for saying it's round. But I'm telling you, buddy, one day everybody's going to know it's round. And the world isn't the center of the universe either. The world is round. The world, I'm here to tell you, they want to kill you and your family. They're putting cancer viruses in the vaccines. These mothers have planted every monster you can imagine. And I do this because I believe in this country. And I believe in humanity and our power to create something.
That's right.
And I'm fighting total dehumanization. And everything I told you is deadly serious.
That's the A game. That much look, he's smiling right afterwards. It's true,
That's the A game, bitch. With that. Gary,
Sir.
world history, tyranny, tyrants. How do we deal with the general public not even being aware of the fact that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? I mean, people before us, our founding fathers, knew you got to restrict government, you got to restrict control over our lives, because bad men will get control of those mechanisms. The government's just a tool, but you don't want to build the tool, the device that can enslave and destroy. Do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, through history, through the beginning of time, we've been learning that power is the ultimate achievement. no matter how the power comes, no matter how you use it. If you're in power, no matter how it is, negative, positive, indifferent, stoic, nothing. But if you feel you have power, and whatever way you use that feeling to give you the power you have, whether it be tyranny, wars, I mean, the greatest oxymoron of them all is holy war, which is not in God's plan. The poor people of the Middle East, the Islams and the Muslims, and the Arabs and the Taliban, the Afghanistans, the Pakistanis, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, Israel, Palestinians, they all have a purpose on this earth, but they're not using the purpose God gave them to use. They're using the fear that they have by not using God's purpose.
Traveling around the United States, do you see the mentality, the militarization of police intensifying? Do you see it getting worse, or is the vibe getting worse?
Well, yeah, I would say so. Even since September 11, I just think overall, all authority has stepped it up a notch.
Douglas MacArthur, another general who cannot be accused of being soft. He said in 1957 to the American people, beware of your government exaggerating foreign threats in order to expand military budgets.
We're talking about $3 trillion in oil in Afghanistan, $4 trillion in Iraq, hundreds of billions of dollars in weapons sales and occupation costs. And Dick Cheney hasn't even allowed bids to be taken. Halliburton and Bechtel and a handful of other corporations that put Bush in office have made all the profits.
Our sitting vice president taking a paycheck, I can't even believe I'm saying this, taking a paycheck from the American people while at the very same time taking one from a corporation that gets billions and billions of dollars in no bid sole source contracts should make us all outraged, and the vice president should blush. But these people don't blush because in the end, they know they can get away with it.
It's about setting the precedent to mobilize the people behind this global war for what PNAC, the president's own organization, says is a war for global domination and setting up a domestic police state, getting rid of posse comitatus, putting troops on the streets, getting Patriot Act 1 passed, trying to pass Patriot Act 2. Okay, type in Project for New American Century. That's where Dick Cheney, 2 years before Bush got elected, said we need terror attacks to scare the people into submission so we can get the oil. Saddam's not a threat. It's all about using that as a military base. Type in Operation North one side down the other. I don't care how crazy it sounds.
You're right, though. Check this out. Hugh Hefner was quoted as saying, I would be delighted to invite President Bush and Senator Kerry for a family reunion. CBS News confirms that Bush, Kerry, and Hefner are cousins.
It's very important to know that this film has been made in the course of the last 12 months. And time again on my own syndicated radio broadcast, and as we made this documentary, I said, look, it's going to be Kerry. Even when Dean was ahead of Kerry, I said, it's going to be Kerry. Think of that. Out of 290 million Americans, we have two people from the most elite secret society in the United States, only 15 members tapped or chosen each year. And this is who we get for our presidential candidates. Out of 290 million, two people from the same organization that just chooses a couple people every year. It's absolutely incredible. Can you guys open website audio up on the air?
Those guys were both members of the secret society at Yale, right?
I have on my website, Infowars.com.
So we're not getting this new guy is no better than the lone
Here's
guy.
the deal. If you believe Reuters, they're third cousins. If you believe the Associated Press, they're ninth cousins. They're both ninth cousins to Hugh Hefner. They're members of the same secret society, only 15 members each year, which admittedly was set up in 1832 to overthrow the U.S.
And we only have 800 living members of that organization, but you can count their members as 3 presidents, 8 CIA directors, many of the heads of the Fortune 500. And they work in concert together to bring you the unfolding police state, to bring you these criminal wars of aggression against sovereign, innocent nations.
Bush, Kerry, and Hefner, odd cousins.
Oh, you
CBS
found it.
News.
Well, understand, anything I spew out is documented.
People of the dangers that I saw emanating from this administration.
The war on terrorism is a thin cover for the war on dissent.
They'll swear up and down a bill is going to give you more freedom, and it's actually giving you a lot less.
So to all the tyrants today and all the tyrants back in history and the tyrants to come in the future, you will be defeated.
You have the spirits of evil working in the leaders and in the politicians and in the generals, working with them. You have nothing but evil.
You need to answer real questions instead of lying.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild. Sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web. Number 322.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, a secret number? There are all kinds of secrets.
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator, 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 I'm the dictator.
American dictatorship. What is an American dictatorship? Well, it's the system of power, the system of control, our real form of government in this country. The American dictatorship is the powerful global corporations that own and control the military-industrial complex, giving you false choices so you think that you have a decision to make in the 2004 election. But either way, a blue blood from the East Coast wins.
In 2002, elections were held in Iraq, and guess who got 100% of the votes? Saddam Hussein, of course. No big surprise there. But nothing like that could ever happen in our country, right?
I think the American people are owed impeachment proceedings in the House of Representatives.
Those who criticize the Patriot Act must listen.
Year after year within this happy grove, our fellowship bends thee for a space.
A world where you only have choice on the surface, but in reality, you're a complete and total slave on a global plantation.
People need to understand this administration lied to the nation about 9/11.
Terrorism must be looked at from all points of the globe, not just America.
I tried to warn the American